Suprapatam, Namaskaram. Mantram Aksharam Nasti, Nasti Mulanaushadam, Ayogyaham Purusho Nasti, Yojakastra Dullabha. Confused. So how many of you at least thought for a minute or for a second that I'm going to deliver my session in Sanskrit? Raise the hand. How many of you have thought that? If you have not thought that, I think there's a challenge. I would like to do a floor test because in the morning I don't want to make you really dozing and how many of you have taken the breakfast? Okay, good. At least we are having some energy. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning.
Thanks. So when I just chanted that mantra, it is there from Rigveda, it says, Amantram Aksharam Nasti. There is no word in this world which doesn't contain any mantra. There is no herb in this world, there is no plant in this world which doesn't contain any medication value. There is no human being, Purusho Nasti. There is no human being in this world which doesn't contain any type of competency or any type of quality. When it comes Purusho, it doesn't mean only males, because then females would feel bad on that. It feels that it is there in the field of human being. Yojakastra Dullabha. Only the facilitator is missing who can actually identify the right competencies in the people, whether it's in the university, whether it's in the corporate. So rather than going into detail, I will start my note with some anecdote. Anecdote means like on a lighter note. So what has happened, like this, some learned speaker who got retired from any university, been invited by any university for a respective session. And what has happened, that person was not so keen to go for that session to address the student. I think it's the same kind of thing when I've been invited by the faculty member, but don't judge me wrong that I was not keen to come there. I'm just giving a hypothetical example. So what has happened, that the speaker invited, and then he could not refrain to say no, and then he actually attended the session. And he started the session by saying that, you know what I'm going to talk about? The speaker asked to the students that, do you know what I'm going to talk about? And the audience was not knowing that what exactly the speaker is going to talk about. And the speaker said, if you really don't know then what I'm going to talk about, then I should take the session. And then he ran away. The organizers were really pissed off. Because it could not complete it. And so next time the organization played wisely. He said, he actually conveyed to all the respondents, to all the students, that what exactly the session is all about. And then again approached the speaker. The organizers were ready that now this time the speaker won't be having any excuse not to take the session. And then speaker again came and started the same note that, and asked the same question to the students. Do you know what I'm going to talk about? The students said, yes, we are pretty much aware that what you're going to talk about. And the speaker said once again, hello, is audible? Backside, back benches? Audible at the back? It happens, don't worry. Technical glitches happen, whether it's live or there's any mechanism, it happens. So the time it's get directed, I think I'm loud enough to reach out my voice to the back benches. So what has happened, the speaker once again asked to the students that, do you know what I'm going to talk about? The students were very wisely nodded their hands and faces and then say that we actually know that what we're going to talk about. And the speaker said, if you're already knowing that what I'm going to talk about, why should you be wasting my time? And he ran away. Again, organizers were pissed off that now what is the remedy for that? And then again, they now played very wise, more than the last one. They separated the students into two groups and conveyed to the students whatever you will be asking. One is to say yes and one is to say no. And third time the speaker will be approached, invited by the university. And again he asked the same question to the students. And do you know what I'm going to talk about? The one batch of the students say yes, another batch of students say no. The organizers were thinking that now the speaker is not having any kind of excuse. But speaker was much wiser than the organizer. He said, those who know what I'm going to talk about can convey to those who doesn't know that what I'm going to talk about. And actually it happened and he ran it. So even in life, it happens when sometimes it's really critical to know something and sometimes it's even more critical not to know something. When you started your journey, you completed your bachelor's, now you're in your new zone, coming for your master's. So many of such things would happen in your life that you might feel that knowing something or not knowing something rightly would make a very large difference in your life, both in your personal and professional aspects. So rather than, because I thought of to make this session more interactive so that I can get the feedback from you all. Interactive, we are having a very close group. So for those who have said no, a big round of applause for all of you, because you are not knowing that what I'm going to talk about. It would be really easy for me because it's like a blank slate. I can make you think and I can write anything so that you can actually leverage the next 1 hour. So be rest assured, you have to bear me for 1 hour. Rather you don't have any choice except bearing me. So, the students, you need to follow. What I am doing, you just need to follow. One can raise your hand like this. Right hand. Please raise your hand. Don't feel hesitant. I am just asking you to raise the hand. I am not going to do yoga session. Don't worry. Raise your hand. Now try. Hold it like this. Only the last finger. Straight. Come on, you are like, so early morning, you just had the breakfast. The second finger, only the second finger. And try to make it align with the last finger. Now do like this. Do like this. Are you with me? Last backbenchers?
Yes.
Now put it on your cheek. So remember what I told you. Put it on your cheek. It's cheek. The first lesson, the foremost lesson of a leadership, that people will do what you do. People want to majority of the time what you say. Because I was pretty clear on that note, that put it on your cheek and I put it on my chin and then simultaneously being followed by all of you. So that's the first and foremost lesson of the leadership. Please be aware, whatever you are doing or whatever you would be doing in a future nearby will be followed by many. And then leaders make mistakes. Like the recent example when Prime Minister of Pakistan visited US and had a meeting with Donald Trump. And imagine the leadership of US, the first citizen of US, the president of US, made a remark which was not right. And he made a remark when that Prime Minister Modi requested him to mediate in the Jammu and Kashmir bilateral talk. It was not right. And it was tough for his own administration that his foreign ministry had to raise a disclaimer that Prime Minister Modi is not saying or not requested anything like this. When in the parliament 2 days back, the foreign and external minister actually released the disclaimer that he was not being requested by the Prime Minister. So it's really critical at the leadership when you are making any such statement, when you are doing nonsense, it would make sense whether it's right or wrong. So we'll start with the PPT. So today my topic for all of you is like how the leadership skills for the managers. Because at one fine day, once you do with your MBA, as you start your professional career, you'll be having a journey in which you will be a manager in some good time. So to start with, when you come down to MBA, you need to be really clear what you're going to do or what you would like to do in your professional career. Because you rightly said, to get where you want to go, first you need to know where you are. Suppose you have taken the admission, it's MBA, it's just starting. And you need to be really clear on that note that in which stream you would like to. I think it's, are you getting, is it making any difference? At back? No? It's fine. So, what I was talking about it, you have to be very clear that what you are doing, what you want to do in your future and your professional life, because it's the starting. How many of you have taken the, how many of you have ever had pizza? Raise it. Almost all of you. Now tell me, how many of you have had a pizza with only bread, without any toppings? Anyone? Only bread, without any toppings. You'll be surprised to know why I'm asking this question to you, because to have pizza is very routine and a common thing, but to have pizza only is, I think, really difficult to have it, because it may correlate that example with your existing status as you entered into the MBA of bread. So once you're through with your MBA, you would be a fat bread. Once you go and start your life in a professional organization, then actually would be the toppings. And those toppings are the skill sets required by you to perform and make that pizza ready and to make your professional career ready. It's pretty critical. One has to be very sure that what journey you are going to undergo once you do your MBA. I would like to make you realize some details regarding what is actually happening. So before getting into the leadership traits and the various jargon, and I'll make sure that I won't be using the corporate jargons, or I won't be using much the terminology which won't be understandable to you. So I'll try to make my presentation very simple. And at any given point of time, if you are having any question, you may feel free to ask that question to you. So interesting study can be been done by Deloitte last year, when they identified some of the countries and tried to assess the usage of data and data analytics, especially in the terms of business. So that study got carried out in 8 countries, France, UK, Germany, China, India, and Japan. Because the market of data analytics is rightly mentioned. As of now, it's $2 billion and going to be $16 billion by 2025. When I'm talking about the data analytics, it's only in terms of the business part. So any guesses, like if I may ask the question, that which country out of 8 is using the data analytics at the maximum level as far as their business practices are concerned? Any guesses from the student side? US. One is USA. Anyone else? China. Anyone?
Korea.
Korea is not there. Who has said Korea? I guess Korea and China is different, so don't mix it up, please. And please wake up. India, okay. Many guesses. You'll be surprised to know the result of the assessment was Brazil. So Brazil is actually using the data on a very higher side than any of the rest of the countries. Because Brazil is, even as of now, is being considered a third world country, but still, as far as their businesses are concerned, they still use data on the maximum level. And one student has said Korea, so again it made me run through one. So how many of you ever heard regarding Maslow's hierarchy? Anyone of Maslow's hierarchy? There are various stages in the Maslow's hierarchy, like the self-actualization, important, and the belongingness, security and the survival. And if we may correlate the Maslow's hierarchy of needs with the engagement side, engagement means it can be a student engagement or a company's aspect, the employee engagement, how the employees within the organization or how the students within the university or colleges is like highly engaged, almost engaged, not engaged and disengaged. So if I may correlate. So interestingly, when the student said Korea, which was not the part of the study, so we all used to hear the kathas of Mora and Tapu,
Maheshri, Ramesh Pai Oja, and whatnot, like the spiritual gurus of India. So, any person goes to Katha or listen Katha, the Maslow's hierarchy of need or the engagement part also applicable on that. If I may correlate both of the examples to make you like feel lighter, there is a 5S theory which is applicable to any of the listening or a conversation or a conferences or a conflict. This 5S theory, when I correlate that thing with Maslow's hierarchy, there are 5 A's. So each of the individual's behavior within those katha and those conversations is applicable to 5 A's. 5 A's are, the first A is Shrota. S for Shrota. It's in Sanskrit. Again, Shrota means all of you are like sitting in front of me. I'm pretending that all of you are listening what I'm saying. It's being registered in your mind, and you are actually perceiving each and every word being said by me. These are the actual Shrota, the ideal Shrota. And you are like this. So big clap for all of you. The second S, which I'm going to talk about, Sushuptas. First Shrota, the second S is Sushuptas. Like that fellow student, Sushupta is like they are still awake. They listen to your conversations. They also do nodding. Yes, no. But the things are not getting registered in their mind. What am I saying, or whatever one is saying, it's not being registered in their minds. So they are not, they are on to the engaged side, but they are not highly engaged. Some things which they may think it's useful for them, they register themselves. Something which they feel that is not being useful for them, so they don't register them. These are the Sushuptas. Now the third S is Sarotas. In Sanskrit, Sarota means the betel nut cutter. Betel nut means supari, and the betel nut cutter will cut the supari. These are the Sarotas. What betel nut cutter do, or what betel nut cutter does, it actually breaks the supari into 2 parts. So the audience which are not engaged very well, they are not listening what you are saying, but at the same time they are also disturbing the others. Try to listen those thoughts. What is there in that? So they are like that. So they are the third category of individuals, which is Sarotas. Now the fourth category, actually Sotas. Sota. The fourth category is actually the individuals who are sleeping in the workplace. When sleeping, it's not the actual sleep, they are awake, but their unconscious mind is almost kind of not working mode. So they are actually Sotas. And the worst category is Saraktas. Can I go to the washroom? Can I go to have some leave? May I take leave? Especially in the context of the organization. घर पे ये हो गया है, घर पे ये problem है, may I take the leave? So they are the Saraktas. So if I may correlate this thing with Maslow's hierarchy, the 5 years. So these are the 5 categories of individual in any organization, or whether it is same is applicable in any colleges or university, or any gatherings where we do have any conferences, conclaves or workshops. Just to make you feel on a lighter note, next slide please. So now I would like to make you see how the global scenario is changing worldwide. If I may correlate some of the companies, like starting from the PT Boss, Netflix, Amazon, and if you can walk through the journey, what they have taken so far. They started as a Fasimal company in 1990s, then turned into data management software, digital documentation, online maps. Now they are running the GPS and GPS services, which again going to be starting in India soon. We talk about Netflix. You must be aware that we are watching the contents on Netflix. So it started actually as an online DVD store, which was renting the DVD to the customers. Then they did the diversification, then they jumped on the customer rating, video on demand, streaming films. Now actually they are making the or manufacturing the production houses for the films and the web series. Same thing applicable with Amazon, which started as a book selling company and turned out to be a Prime and Alexa software now. So these are the the ways of transition, how the companies are transitioning with the help of diversified potential as far as their businesses are concerned. Excellent. So a pretty interesting thing happened. So when 2008 recession came, so one of the journalists asked one of the CEO of Lehman Brothers, who was like a major defaulter during that time, and he happened to ask him, I mean, if you are aware about the 2008 recession, global, worldwide, there was a recession in 2008. So that journalist asked the question to the CEO of Lehman Brothers and the Gold Sachs, that how did you lose your business? What happened actually that suddenly collapsed? And he happened to answer it that first I lose my business gradually and then suddenly. So that was a very simple but yet a profound answer being given by the CEO of that company, because there is a when you are going to pursue your MBA further, I think you need to thoroughly read the books of some of the scholars which is being known worldwide. So one of the scholars I'm co-read is Jim Collins. So Jim Collins has written many books, but one of the famous book is like how the organizations are developing and getting into the maturity stage and become a successful organization. So one of the two books, if I may quote, you can also write, Good to Great is one book, and Build to Last is the second book, what Jim Collins used to say, that how the organization are building their success stories. So when that recession happened in the tenure of when the US President was George W. Bush, and he called off a meeting with the top 100 CEOs of the US in the White House. So what has happened in that meeting? Jim Collins was also been invited because he has studied many successful organizations of the world. So even he was being called off. And in that meeting, the agenda was to check the nerves, what is going on, check the pulse and how the organizations are performing, how the things are happening. So one of the CEO of GE, which is a General Electric, happened to ask Jim Collins that, do you know what is going to be happening? He said, I don't know. And he again asked that, do you know what would happen to my company? He said, I don't know. But he said that you studied my organization as a case study in your book, then how come you are saying that you don't know that what is going to be happen with GE? I don't know after the massive destruction or this sudden destruction for that Lehman Brothers. And that's what happened. Jim Collins was a sprinter. His wife was also a sprinter. Sprint like running fast. So he used to practice sprinting with his wife early in the morning every day. And his wife was a better sprinter than Jim Collins. So after that conversation in the White House, after 6 months, his wife got diagnosed with a cancer, and it was lung cancer. And it made the idea to Jim Collins, it made him think that my wife was a better sprinter than me. And if you are a sprinter, your lungs should be or must be in a good form. Then and then you can sprint really hard. He was thinking my wife was a better sprinter. How she got diagnosed with a cancer? And that made him think, and she passed away later on. And that made him think that how the same theory is applicable to the organizations. When organization is doing really good, organization is performing really at its best, and how suddenly it collapsed. And then he has written a third book, which is named How the Mighty Fall. That how, and in that book, he has only studied the disaster stories of the organization, how like Kodak, Nokia, or many others. So it's the scenario when the margins are shrinking within the organizations, profit margins are shrinking, organizations are cutting the corners. Two things is happening. Data is actually killing the processes. Technology is killing the organizations. With the usage of data, with the use of analytics, these two disruptions are happening within the organization. With the global scenario, I would also like to touch upon what is going around within India. So in India, if you see, the 50% of Indians are self-employed, and they contribute almost 10% of the India's total GDP. Self-employed, they are doing any business, small scale, medium scale, micro scale. They are into an entrepreneurship zone. They are doing something for themselves, for their butter and bread. And you'd be surprised to know 0.7% of the Indian workforce is engaged directly or indirectly into IT or ITES, and they are contributing almost 8% of the total GDP. Now see the numbers, 50% of the India's total population and 0.7% of India's population. So see the disparity. And still 67% of the Indian requires food subsidy. But still, the unemployment rate in India is only 4.9%. So data are contradicting actually. So the challenge, or rather than in the upcoming note, the biggest challenge for all of the guys who are actually coming into the organization is not the unemployment. The challenge is the minimum or less wages. So until and unless, next slide please, you are not making yourself highly skilled, because skill is like a topping for the pizza and degree is just like a base of the bread. If you want to be really skilled, paid high, then one should be, it's only by getting out with a good mark from any education institute is not enough. One is to really work upon on the skill set part. When I'm saying skill, it's all about the interpersonal skills, the soft skill part, because I think that is the thing which is playing a very vital role in the organizations as of now. Just a scenario, you must have read that Fortune 500 companies have listed down the list of 500 companies of the world. So there is a huge disparity. Even the disruption is happening in that note, that how in 1995 started and published the first list of Fortune 500 companies, in which the average age of the company is almost 60 years. As of now in 2019, the average age of the company is less than almost 15 years. So if you don't get the thing, I'll give you a simple example. In 1955, any company who get into the Fortune 500 list was existed for almost 60 years. As of now in 2019, any company which gets into the list of Fortune 500 company lasts there for not more than 15 years. So the lifespan of the company within Fortune 500 is actually deteriorating. So companies, since 1955, more than 6,000 companies have get into the Fortune 500 list and came out. You'll be surprised to know there are not more than 70 companies who were there in 1955 and who are still existing in 2019. So there is a huge disparity, the disruption. Next slide please. Again the survey from the Oxford, that by 2025, 47% of the existing skill set going to be vanished. Next slide please. When I'm saying going to be vanished, it's like the skill set which you learn now may be obsolete after 5 years or 6 years. An interesting quote from Google when they started with Google for jobs. At the same time, what I was mentioning earlier, 46% of the employees say that they face a challenge to identify a right and a potential competent people or employees or a candidate for their organization. At the same time, the students or the candidates are not finding the employability. So there is a huge gap. So that the students are not finding the job or the candidates are not finding the job. At the same time, organizations are not finding the right candidate. So what is actually happening? So students are just coming out from the campuses of university with degrees, which might not be useful for the organization because they are lacking with the skill set. Next slide please. So some of the areas of concern for the CEO, for any person who is in charge of any company are, the first, if you see the global scenario, US scenario, Asia, Europe and Latin America, that the first and foremost challenge for any CEO is to find the right talent for their organization. And that is the area of concern, but organizations are not finding the right talent. As I told you earlier, skill set is more important because only in 2018, 55 new job roles have been created and 155 new job skill set have been identified by NSDC, which is a National Skill Development Corporation. Again, Indian body which runs under the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. So these are the current data. And the reason why I'm just putting would like to have attention in this is these are the challenges which will going to be identified by yours once you prove it your academics. So as I was mentioning earlier, scaling are the thing which is very difficult to define, easily outdated and short in supply. So people are having the degrees, students are having the degrees, but I think it's not of use for the organizations. Next slide please. How many of you know this person? Huh?
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, yeah, very famous man. So while in the quote of Steve Jobs, he has very wisely mentioned that how the experience is equally important in any organization. Because there are two types of growth for any candidate or any employee within the organization. One is a vertical growth and one is a horizontal growth. Vertical growth when one person joins at the executive level and keep on building their competencies in their respective portfolio. Suppose one joins as executive HR and then keep building his portfolio, HR executive manager, senior manager, GM or VP or a head of HR. And one is the horizontal growth when the person is actually diversifying one's portfolio. One is there in the HR and the same person can work into the L&D part or the administration part or any other vertical. So there are two types of growth. I won't go into detail. But what we wanted to say is until and unless the person is or the candidate is not having a diversified and a broad purview for that respective portfolio, it's really difficult for any person to connect the dots within the organization and one cannot move in the organization so fast. So we are living in age, next slide please. So now it might be interesting for all of you, the various phases of various categories of generations which we can identify. Some of the baby boomers when the average age is between 50 to 70. So current is the time when all these three generations are simultaneously working in any organization. If you right now, if any candidate join any organization, one would find these three generations working at the same time, and that's I think the biggest challenge for any person, because baby boomers, idealistic, optimistic, they are pretty dedicated and they spend the time in the organization. There are many examples when one has ended one's career and started one career in the same organization. When it comes to my generation, Gen X, 35 to 39, flexible, adaptable, slightly cynical, and like to pursue new things. And all of the generation of yours, millennials, when the millennials want everything very speedily, less in patience, and high on delivery path, and digital natives. So the conflict arises when all of these three generations works hand by hand. Next slide please. Please observe this picture. Now tell me, how many of you thought that there are 5 phases in the top line and there are only 4 guys? How many of you have observed that thing? Almost everyone. So it's very good for you that you have thought of that thing, because at one moment that impression might have arisen in your mind that there are 5 phases, it has to be 5 people. Who is it? And specifically, I have reduced one person in the picture just to make you think that whatever you are thinking, it has to be critical, it has to be logical. Anyone can give me the logic? If 5 phrases are there, it has to be 5% downline. Any logic in that? No logic. Still you have thought of that thing. So whatever you are thinking, it has to be logical. Next slide please. Now the perception part, Daniel Kahneman, if you don't know him, is one of the very profound psychologists, this American scholar, has said that we are generally overconfident in our decisions or in our opinions, impressions, etc. So whatever we are thinking, we unknowingly make on a higher note that we make our confidence on a very higher side. Next slide please, I think it will cover more. So there is a graph, if we draw the graph on the experience part, whatever Steve Jobs was saying and Daniel Kahneman is saying, confidence versus experience. So if you are building up your confidence after certain level, hypothetically, it curves down, bends down, because even you are having an experience, and by the experience of you are saying something, the judgment is, it's very high possibility that you may go wrong in your judgment. And the best example for that is, next slide please, Mr. Trump. And there is an actual tweet what he did some time back. And if you can read, you can understand what he is mentioning about. So if you are feeling, and then like interestingly, I think 2 days back I was just watching the news and being known that he has almost talked live in more than I think 6,000 times his presidency so far. So it's all about the confidence and the how it correlates with the attitude. Next slide please. So the thing which you all of guys have to be aware that you are preparing for the Olympics. In the words of Thomas Friedman, was written, the world is flat, a brief history of the 21st century. He has quoted very wisely that whatever you are doing, you have to be ready, like you are preparing for the Olympics. One is, I mean, this I just won the gold in the Commonwealth Games, one is planning for the Olympics next year. So if one is planning or preparing oneself for the Olympics, one has to really play hard. But the only difference between that sports person who is preparing for the Olympics and all of you are, he is knowing that thing, that I am preparing for tennis, I am preparing for swimming, I am preparing for any other sports. But you all guys, you have to be really prepared that once you come out from your academia or your education, you don't know where the organization would lead you. You have to be ready for any level or any competence. It has to be in general. Next slide please. So now when we jump on the leadership part, before I jump onto the leadership part, I would like to make you watch one area. I'm sure, I'm just wondering if it's possible. It's there in the pen drive, you can just run it through 2 minutes AV, and then we'll talk about the basic aspects of the leadership and try to summarize my discussion on that note. Just gonna go down.
And crucial period of your lives. What you do now and what you... To decide now at this age may well determine. This is the most important. This is the most important and crucial period of your lives. For what you do now and what you decide now at this age may well determine which way your life shall go. And the question is whether you have a proper, a solid, and a sound blueprint. And I want to suggest some of the things that should be in your life's blueprint. Number one, in your life's blueprint should be a deep belief in your own dignity, your own worth, and your own somebodyness. Don't allow anybody to make you feel that you are nobody. Always feel that you count. Always feel that you have worth. And always feel that your life has ultimate significance. Secondly, in your life's blueprint
Martin Luther has said. I don't know if you know Martin Luther King. He has like fought many things for the rights of black people in US, and he has like seen like this as respected as Gandhiji in India. So, if I may say, go back to last slide. Okay, that's fine. So, if I may pursue that, what is leadership? When we are talking about leadership, it's like you may go to the details like it articulates and embodies a vision, goals, and enables others to share and achieve. Next slide, please. So, when we are talking about leadership, we used to have many theories that leaders are born, leaders are made, and there is a huge contribution happening, like the same thing which is first, chicken or an egg. And we used to have the same conversation for leadership, whether leaders are born or leaders are made. When the thought of Warren Bannis, which is a American scholar, he has said that one is leaders are born, it's not the right thing to mention, but leaders are actually made. And if you go to any leader, which you follow, or which any person follows, you may find some incidents in one's life which forced them or which motivated them to be a leader in their respective life. So to talk about leader in a simple term, if I may correlate, what is leadership? So whenever you are doing something, your actions, your words, your thoughts, if it's motivating any person, then one is having a mere possibility to be a leader in that respective zone. So I think, how many of you have done, how many of you have known that we have launched Chandrayaan 2, I think, 4 days back. And if you know the person, if I correlate this picture with two ladies which did this exercise very wisely, M. Savita, who was a project director for Chandrayaan 2, and Ritu Karidhar, who was a mission director for Chandrayaan 2, both were females. When it comes to their leadership, there is again a myth that females can't be a leader. So big kudos to all the females who's going to be leader for future nearby. So even two ladies independently done that exercise and successfully launched the Chandrayaan 2 by ISRO 4 days back. Next slide, please. So when it comes to the leadership, some of us come up with the excuses. Excuses in the sense that, excuse one, I can't lead, I don't have a position and authority. So it's a mere excuse if one is saying that though I'm not having any position or authority, I can't lead anything. It's again myth. Excuse number 2, I'm just not natural take charge person. So some people are like, have decided that I can't lead anyone in my life because I'm not having those capabilities in me so that I can lead others. Excuse 3, I'm not introvert, I'm an introvert and so I don't really influence others. Again, there is a myth. Excuse 4, if everyone is a leader, then who is following? So it's like the same thing when we are getting less marks in the examination. It's like if all are getting first class, then would be the second class. I'm privileged to be in second class or a past class. Excuse 5, leadership means power and our courage. So I think all are the excuses and myths which has been prevailed within the individuals when it comes to leading the individuals and as far as leadership. Next slide, please. So now what we, so if we may correlate the strategic self-awareness for the leadership, there are two things which is actually happening. Leaders who lack of awareness and leaders who know themselves. So if you lack of the awareness is like in psychology there is a exercise called Johari window which talks about the 4 sides of any individual. The blind spots, denial, the obsolete and the failed part. And if we correlate the Johari window, I think it's applicable to the leaders that if one was not knowing their hidden side or their blind side. But at the same time, the person who are actually knowing themselves better than the blind person is actually mature enough to take the feedback regarding his leadership style, his leadership traits, accept the feedback because only taking the feedback, not registering into own mind and not doing any action on that, I think again to make the mass act on the feedback. So it's like a PDCA cycle, P, plan, do, check and act, and are more successful than those who don't, like the first category. Next slide please. And there is also a myth that the career advancement doesn't always mean a people leadership. The students generally, when they come to the organization and they start their induction and integration within the organization, they feel that when it comes to the successful within their respective career or success in their respective career, it's only about people leadership. So now I'll make you through the various traits of leadership, how there are various types of leadership, and may quote some example in that next slide. So there are certain categories that people will take up once they take up any role in their organization, like the project leaders, technical leaders, innovation leaders, product leaders, and team leaders. And in the disruption phase, when we are moving towards in 21st century, there are many leadership positions which were not there in the past and now arising gradually. Next, please. So these are the various dimensions or various types of the leadership where we found leaders for the respective companies. I'll talk on each of the type in detail in the next slides. How many of the name is written for that lady without googling that name? If you can tell me that who is this lady? Any guesses without googling? Okay, let me simplify it for you. She is the CEO of Oracle. So Oracle is a company who is making the softwares and ERP for the world over and very much famous, like SAP is again a profound leader in that respective zone. So at Oracle, she has quoted, if you achieve silver medal, it's the first loser. So it's like if you are not having a second class or not having a first class in the examination, you are a first loser. It doesn't mean that you are failing in the examination, then and then you are losing the things. Even if not achieving the best is again some kind of correlation with the losing part. And Oracle is more known to their profound and very robust processes. So she can be called a leader for result. Whatever we are doing, ultimately we are doing it for result. Whether it's in the context of the organization or school, college or any university, ultimately result matters. What we have achieved at last. So these are some of the traits or some of the personality of the result-oriented leaders. They are more prone and more proactively thinking about the result part. What is the end? They don't really focus and do the micromanagement, but they are more concerned about the result part. Next slide, please. Now the next category is Tony Hassis. Tony Hassis is the CEO for Zappos, and he can be called as a people leader. Why he can be called a people leader? Through his quote that he is into the e-commerce platform like Amazon or Flipkart. So when you are delivering any stuff, when any person is booking any order, so the delivery boy who is actually making it deliver makes sense whether he is rightly doing the same process or not. So he has rightly said you can't deliver good service from unhappy employees. So if I may quote, suppose I'm working in SRK is delivering payments to their customers. If the employees of SRK are not happy, so that person won't be find a connect for those dimensions what the person is made. So it's again a vital and a spiritual connection between, especially the people part. I think I may quote the example from one of the book written by von Strompenas. Von Strompenas is a world-renowned culture group. What he has quoted in this book, there are two types of organizations. There are one type, if we perceive the organization is a system designed to carry out the work, and they hire people, the people work with the usage of technology and machineries, and they get the desired and we pay the people. So they are actually the employees of the company. The second category of the organization is the people within the organization is the group of people, and it's like a social group. And the result of that particular process, whether it's a study or any work taken care by the organization, is exactly in correlation of the social bonding of that particular group. How the person to person is connected socially, and how the person is connected to the organization in social aspect. So it's exactly in correlation. So now some of the next slide please. Again, how many of you know this person? Jeff Bezos. Now he has overcome Microsoft and Google. Now he's having the largest network in the world, and your margin is my opportunity. Very profoundly he has said this statement that your margin is my opportunity. Because Amazon, if you look at this, there's also mentioned the scenario how Amazon has grown in the early stages. They are more focused about the systems, processes, policies, manuals, and one is really adhere to those compliances, and that's how they grow. So it's like a more of the process side. Next slide, please. This lady is the CEO for IBM, and why she can be called a thought leader is due to the culture within the IBM. The person, Mr. Watson, was benchmarked the IBM in early 40s. So what has happened in the World War II phase, like almost in the 1940s, when IBM loses a contract, because at that time IBM was also there into the defense contract. So there was a meeting when IBM was supposed to part in the tender process, and ultimately we lose one tender. In those days, the tender was of $1 million. And the director of that particular tendering process was the senior member of IBM, went to Mr. Watson with the letter of resignation. Because he morally felt that the company lose that tender of 1 million when the IBM even was going through a rough time and it was not being possessed by the company. He felt that on a moral responsibility I should resign from my post. And he actually submitted the resignation to Mr. Watson, the chairman of the company. And what Mr. Watson has said, that why are you feeling that you have made a loss of $1 million to the company? Actually, the company has invested $1 million in learning. If we are having the same approach as a student or a candidate, when we are, any time when we are making any mistake, it's like investing in the learning part. So we should not be afraid of making the mistake, but what are the learning from those mistakes is actually critical. And that's why again the same culture drives the IBM as of now. So that is a thought leadership. Next slide, please. Richard Branson, social leader, the Virgin Group, who is like managing the Virgin Group, and now he said you can't be a good leader unless you generally like people. So it's like more on the socialization part when you are actually connected socially towards your employee and do the things in by taking or achieving that competence. Next slide, please. Okay, now at the last, the data leader. We know, all of us know him, Bill Gates. And what he is saying, the computers are great because when you are working with them, you get immediate result that let you know if your program runs or program works. But it's not applicable to the human being. When you are studying over here, when you are supposed to start your journey for 2 years, you don't know where you would be ending up, or what you will be getting after that. As of now, we are blank on that now. Only thing which we can do best is how we can proceed to our path and set the goals for the organization. So it's not like that one can achieve the leadership only in those characteristics. You can set your own path. You can adopt a different approach to achieve or do the start journey for your leadership and capitalize on your strengths and create your own leadership path. So it's not required that whatever I have just conveyed or whatever that the so I won't go into the details like what are the various traits for the manager and the leader part. There are certain traits which I will be skipping out with the interest of time. There are various 6 traits of leadership which how can desire to lead, integrity, job relevant knowledge, intelligence, self-confidence and driven, and I won't go into detail. And what I want to say is any organization is wanting us to be extraordinary. They don't want us to be ordinary. If one is ordinary, again same theory applies in India especially. The problem is people less wages, and less wages only applicable to the ordinary people. If you want to really be good in life, then one has to be extraordinary. And then at the end, this advice from the CEO side or from the company's owner to all of us, I won't go into details, but you just walk through it, at any given point of time, if you are not making a business case for your organization or for your department, then you would not be valued. Because one of the scholars, HR scholar, they would reach a very rightly saying that until and unless one is not creating a value for an individual within the organization won't leverage your presence and you would not be felt privileged within the organization. And at last, I don't want to just quote this example, but if you are feeling that you want to make everyone happy, that is not possible. One can actually sell the ice cream rather than thinking about leadership or thinking about that quote. So the best way to predict the future is inventing. Thank you all of you, and thanks for bearing me for 1 hour. Good takeaways from this session. Thank you.
As the tagline of my Auro University is from learner to leader. So Dr. Neeraj says and gives some tips to how to become a leader. We are here to create for the learner how to learn subject wise, but Dr. Neeraj gives how to become a leader, what should be the criteria, what should be the size of the leadership in the future. Thank you very much, sir. And now I would like to invite Dr. Govinda Ahluwalia, who is the President of the Lieutenant of the
Boys, take your seat. Equanimity.